My name is Joe Stewart. I'm in the Political Science Department at Clemson University in South Carolina. I got to talk to some of your classmates either yesterday or the day before, and decided I needed to talk to a different group. I need to learn more about the Constitution, so I'm looking forward to learning that from you.
Yes, and good morning. I'm Anthony Arapino. I'm an environmental attorney at the Conservation Law Foundation in Montpelier, Vermont. I'm very pleased to be judging on Monday at Nationals for the first time.
Hi, I'm Pat Long. I'm a retired Superior Court Commissioner from California, and I'm looking forward to being educated by you all.
Please introduce yourselves and your teacher.
I'm Michael Stagel, and we're all juniors from Wauwatosa West High School.
I'm Alexandra Poli.
Morgan Sigla.
Allison Sauter.
I'm Herschel Kissinger, and this is our teacher, Mr. Chad Matesky.
Good morning.
Well, again, congratulations to you, your teacher, and the parents. It should come as no surprise to you that we're going to do question one today. It's a habit you develop as a judge to go ahead and mention that. I'll read the question for the benefit of the people in the room who are not familiar with it, and then we will hear what you have to say about it. An American scholar claims that because democracy is a government by persuasion and deliberation, it implies the existence of what in the British tradition is known as the loyal opposition. So long as the opposition is attached to the fundamental principles upon which democratic government is based, organized opposition to the prevailing government is not only legitimate, but essential to its proper functioning. Do you agree or disagree? Why? How would you describe or define loyal opposition, and how would you distinguish it from obstructionism? What purposes does or should loyal opposition serve in a democracy? You may begin.
American journalist Edward R. Murrow once said, "We must not confuse dissent with disloyalty. When the loyal opposition dies, I think the soul of America dies with it." In today's day and age, with partisan politics on the rise, many people are now questioning the legitimacy and effectiveness of the national government. However, as much as conflict can slow decision-making, it is essential to hear all sides of an issue before making a final choice. This is why loyal opposition is in many ways essential to the success of democracy.
Loyal opposition occurs when an out-of-power group or party opposes the governing party while remaining loyal to the principles on which government is based. These principles include federalism, separation of powers, equal protection, the consent of the governed, as well as the protection of people's rights through the first 8 amendments. The practice was developed in the British Parliament and is a key to the functioning of the government of the United States, notably in the legislative branch.
However, loyal opposition is not limited to Congress. It extends to the states and even to the people. James Madison's Virginia Resolution is an example of loyal opposition by the states, and the National Equality March and Tea Party movement allowed for citizens to voice their opposition.
Loyal opposition is essential to government's functioning because it ensures that we are truly a nation operating on the principle of consent of the governed. And without opposition, governments are more likely to produce poorly planned legislations and policies, and are more capable of infringing on minority rights.
Because we are a nation where the people are what Madison called the fountain of authority in Federalist 51, the loyal opposition should ensure that all viewpoints of our nation are heard, resulting in balanced laws and policies that accurately address all sides of an issue. Those in power must allow for the opposition to be heard, while the minority must see the value of compromise and sometimes secession.
Unfortunately, there is a difference between what loyal opposition should achieve and what it does achieve in today's political climate. Tense partisanship can create a tug of war for power, which leads to an unwillingness to hear opposition. This causes the opposition to have to go to great lengths to get attention. An example is the Killer D's, a group of Democrats from Texas who fled from their state to bust a quorum, thus preventing a vote on redistricting. Events such as these not only waste taxpayer dollars, but can cause a breakdown of faith in government.
Examples such as the Killer D's can be considered obstruction. Obstruction occurs when the opposing party deliberately stalls or halts deliberation or finds means to prevent the law from being executed. Also, at times both parties can contribute to obstruction by refusing to make the compromises necessary to get legislation passed. An example is the 20-day government shutdown in the 1990s when President Clinton and Congress failed to reach an agreement on funding measures. Today, with excessive use of the Senate filibuster and a failure to approve presidential appointments, a minority can do excessive damage to the proceedings of government.
However, we find that not all obstruction is bad. In fact, if tied to one of our fundamental principles of government, obstruction can actually better our government. As Samuel Adams said, it does not require a majority to prevail, but rather an irate, tireless minority keen to set brush fires in people's minds. Such irate minorities are found both within and outside of the government. For instance, the sit-ins by the civil rights protesters in the 1950s and 60s went beyond simple opposition. Their civil disobedience can be viewed as an obstruction of the policy that allowed for this discrimination. This example demonstrates that obstruction, when used wisely and sparingly, can actually benefit the government more than loyal opposition alone.
Although loyal opposition creates a substantial amount of controversy, it is in fact necessary for the well-being of a nation. And just because two sides may differ on an issue does not mean they want to discard the fundamental principles of our government. Thomas Jefferson addressed this very issue in his 1801 inaugural address. After tense conflict with former President John Adams, Jefferson assumed the role of president in what has been called a bloodless revolution.
Speaking of the opposition he had both created and faced, he declared, "Every difference of opinion is not a difference of principle. We have called by different names brethren of the same principle. We are all Republicans, we are all Federalists."
Okay, thank you. Okay, thanks for that presentation. You can put away your notes now, and we will try to get some amplification on some points. In this discussion, we wind up using terms like you used excessive use of the filibuster. How do we go about drawing the line about when the use of a filibuster is excessive? Is there some principle that we can articulate so that as observers we would know when it's an excessive use and when it's an acceptable use?
I don't think there's any specific principle we need to address to say that the filibuster is being excessively used, but when senators start, for an example, reading children's books on the Senate floor, I think that is when the filibuster is getting too out of hand.
Brutus 12 says that there is little room to doubt that these men will often go up to the bounds as often as occasion and opportunity may offer. And I think that the way the senators are able to draw the line is when not only the senators check each other, but when the public realizes what's going on.
I think it's especially important when there's budget issues at hand, because I think that without a budget, it's very difficult for the government to function. In our statement, we talked about a government shutdown that took place between 1995 and 1996 because they failed to reach funding agreements, and various outcomes occurred, including the National Institute of Health hotline was shut down, so people weren't able to call that. There was a backlog of 200,000 requests for passports. People need these things to continue functioning in government. So I think that in cases of economic issues, I would support, the reconciliation or the nuclear option to kind of end the filibustering.